refreshments and find your way to the chair, we will get started. It's so nice to see everybody today. This is great. I feel like it should be September, since I missed the whole month and missed everything. I know it was well taken care of by Shelley. Thank you very much. Will you join me now in prayer? Dear Father, we find ourselves looking forward to a new season. Temperatures changing, foliage changing, and just beyond this will come the holidays. As we start to plan celebration of Advent and Thanksgiving, let's not forget and let's keep our minds and hearts mindful of today. Lord, help us appreciate today and every day. This is a marvelous day with its own opportunities and challenges. Keep our minds focused on today as well as future plans. Also, open our ears and our hearts as we listen to Morgan present our book for this month. Be with Morgan as she presents the book. And be with those who are not able to be with us today. And be with those who are with us today. Bless our church, our leaders, and our families. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, thanks again, Shelley, for your help last month. Ellen, would you mind picking up the refreshment sign-up sheet? I'm going to pass it around this morning. I need to tell you that Jane is not with us today. She is busy packing for a move tomorrow to Franklin on Sunset. She's going to be a neighbor of Jane Warren's. As a matter of fact, Jane Warren should be on commission from there because she made one visit there, visited Jane, and immediately signed up and is now moving. So anyway, let's keep her in her prayers as she makes an adjustment to a different lifestyle than what she's been in. But she is not with us today. So let's pass that sheet around and let's surprise her with some names on there. I would like to take this opportunity to talk about refreshments. I know Literature Circle has become known for cake. I know that. It does not have to be. Bring anything you would like. Cookies and coffee. What better refreshment could there be? Anything. Crackers and cheese. Popcorn. Anything, any nice snack, anything you enjoy would be fine. And I've put room for two names, and it's fun to sometimes work with somebody else on a month.
Billy and I are partnering up.
Okay.
Partner up.
I appreciate that. And so anyway, there's the list coming. And so that takes care of that. On Ellen, the good news is she is now giving out books of hers that have been already purchased. Next month, November the 11th, she will be back at the white table there in the corner, and she will be having books for sale. For those of you that have not seen it or have and want to buy one, they will be available in November. So that's next month. I will be leaving that table up though. I'm liking it today. I have included WOC information. We've got Ladies' Night Out. There's cards on that and also on the luncheon. Excuse me. And I know, Ladies' Night Out is tonight. Do not hesitate. I'm sure she would not mind if we showed up at the house tonight, even though we weren't on the list. I'm sure it's fine if you'd like to pick up the card. The luncheon, you can get tickets for that on Sundays. I got mine this past Sunday. They'll be selling tickets there, or you can do it online. There's a number of different ways you can do it. I would like to announce there's one change, that Emily Peoples will be our speaker this year. So I'm sure it's going to be wonderful as always. It's always good food, good speakers, good decorations, and I think that's it for that table, although I'll keep the list of books for the year there for anybody, because we do have some new people here that have not been with us before, and I'd love to have them come back. That would be great. And if you want to pick up a list of the books, and that's also thanks to Shelley, in a great part. She has put together the list and the reviewers, and I love it when we have our very own members reviewing as well. Let's see. Okay, Morgan Fuller, this is not her first book review with us. She's done another one before, and many of you have heard and many of you know Morgan. So a lot of you already know many of the things that I said the first time. She's a Texas native. She met Bob at Washington and Lee University, that she majored in chemistry, and that she has her master's in both chemistry and library and information science. So let's assume you know all that. Now I want to go off script with Morgan's okay. I think sometimes we take a lot of things for granted, and I think we are so blessed that Morgan Fuller is a covenant partner and with us. She does a lot for us. We all see her in the library with Suzanne, and you never know when you're going to see her in there. She can just be in there anytime at all. Even this morning a little bit, I saw her in there. She does a lot for WOC. She's also in another circle. And most of all, if you run into Morgan in the hallway, anywhere in this church, you're going to get a smile and a greeting. So I'd like us to show our appreciation right now for Morgan. And of course, I didn't mention, not least of all, is that she is willing to review books for us.
I just appreciate being asked back. That's a good sign. Definitely a good sign. Again, Morgan Fuller's second book review, and today I'm reviewing The Girl Who Smiled Beads by Clemantine Wamariya. Now, usually I follow the lead of our resident expert reviewer, Martha Smith, who's the English professor, and she likes to introduce books by talking a bit about the author first, their motivation, their inspiration, and even their techniques for writing. But because this is a book of nonfiction, this review is really all about the author and her personal experiences. So the book opens with a prologue with Clementine and her older sister Claire, who were invited to join Elie Wiesel and other survivors of genocide on the Oprah show. I considered showing a clip from the show, but after watching it, I realized that the segment was really pure Oprah, very sensationalized. So Oprah actually surprised Clementine and Claire in that segment, just like when everyone in the audience gets a new car. They were given the gift of an in-person reunion with their parents, their younger sister, and the two siblings they'd never met, right then and there on the Oprah show. Now, it was a touching, tearful reunion after 12 years apart. The sisters had actually discovered 5 years prior that their parents were still alive, but at that point, Clementine and Claire were living in the United States without any real means to reconnect with their family. It was a beautiful moment on the show, but that's kind of all it was, a moment. How do you relate to a family that you haven't seen in 12 years? How do you reconnect when, as Clementine writes, after the show, I sat on Claire's couch looking at my strange new siblings, the ones who'd replaced me and Claire. They looked so perfect, their skin unblemished, their eyes alight, like an excellent fictional representation of a family that could have been mine. But they didn't know me and I didn't know them, and the gap between us was 1 billion miles wide. This is a story about Clementine Wamariya, the victim of the Rwandan genocide. So the book itself was written as a non-linear narrative, with each chapter presenting Clementine's story along one of two timelines. So her African chronology, beginning when she was 6 years old in 1994, interspersed with her American experiences upon her arrival in the United States in 2000 at age 12. So it's kind of helpful at each chapter heading, there's a date line. So you at least get the year so you can get a feel for which timeline. And above each one I wrote how old she was at that particular point, which just sort of helped me. In the 6 years since she had seen or heard from her parents after fleeing Rwanda, Clementine and her sister Claire traveled through 7 African countries. The United States then was their 8th country. So Clementine's life began fairly normally, as we Americans understand life. She grew up in Kigali, Rwanda, in the city. They were privileged, Abakire. Her father had a commercial garage, something he started and grew from a single car. Her mother dressed conservatively, spent her mornings at church and her afternoons in her garden, and followed a typical devout Catholic Rwandan post-colonial ethos: stay as invisible as possible. Clementine, on the other hand, was a curious, precocious child. She had a nanny who indulged all of her questions and told her wonderful stories. Probably the finest gift her nanny, Mukamana, gave her was that her stories were open-ended. She always asked Clementine, "And then what do you think happened?" Can you guess what happened next? Clementine's answers were always correct, so she learned storytelling at an early age. So Clementine, at age 5, started kindergarten, but before too long, military conflict had reached Kigali, and it was no longer safe to go to school, no longer safe to play outside, not even to open the curtains. The electricity cycled on and off. The water was shut off. Everyone was expected to be silent all the time. The militias were moving in, killing people, and taking young girls. So Clementine's mother told Clementine and Claire, her older sister by 9 years, to pack a bag. They were headed to their grandmother's farm a few hours south. She loved her grandmother's farm, loved to visit, loved to pick up soaps on the way and take them to her grandmother. But this time, they left behind their parents, their brother Pudi, her very best playmate, and her 2-year-old sister, Claudette. They took a van with as many other girl cousins as would carry and headed south. But before long, a knock came on that door, and the girls were forced to run, belly crawl, out the back door, through a sweet potato field and into a thick banana grove. And they didn't stop moving until they made it to America 6 years later. So this is a book of that journey, and I'll let you read about the facts of that journey, but I'll share with you some things that I learned. So in the book, before the prologue, there's a map. It shows Clementine and Claire's route through Africa from 1994 to 2000. It charts an almost unbelievable path of hardship and misery, pain and suffering, the likes of which I can't even imagine. They traveled on foot, by bus, they nearly drowned, crossing Lake Tanganyika in a boat with 50 other frantic refugees. And as the boat is sinking, they're throwing over their last prized possessions. They went under and over and through razor wire and electric border fences and invisible border fences. They slept in huts and on floors. They spent 1.5 years sleeping in the open. They were helped by poor farming families and nuns, friendly people in the cities, and they lived for a time in horrendous conditions in multiple refugee camps in various countries. And in every time and every place, war found them again. So compared to similar works of nonfiction, like Night by Elie Wiesel, or even Golden Bones by our very own Sishan Sid, who writes about his escape from the killing fields of Cambodia all the way to his ascension to work in the Bush 41 White House. Can these books fully or even adequately portray the horrors that these individuals went through? Can they? Do they? That's a question when you read these. Think to yourself, was it worse? How could it have been worse? So I'd like to focus on several themes that I found in this particular version of genocide, and not speak necessarily to the genocide itself. named more aptly in the subtitle, A Story of War and What Comes After. So the first theme, I think, that runs throughout the book is that her story, Clemantine's story, is not unique, though it is singular. She notes multiple times and in various ways throughout the book that every human life is equally valuable, and each person's story is vital, not just this one. So it's hard for people to understand the life of another, especially if they have no common experiences, no common language for even what was experienced. A quote from the book, that after Clementine had been asked to start speaking to small groups about her experiences after the Oprah segment had aired, she said this, "But they understood nothing, least of all that I wasn't special. There were so many of me, thousands, millions. I just happened to be the one standing in the room. Don't cry for me," I wanted to say. "Cry for them. It will take you 100 lifetimes to cry for all of them." Despite all that death, she had an uncle, she lost her uncle and many family members, the people in the streets they saw on the sides of the roads, the people in the camps. The first person she ever mourned was her brother Pudi, who she last saw when she left at age 6, but lost to meningitis when she was 18. She was in America, he was in Africa, and it was right before her parents emigrated to the United States. The first person she ever truly mourned. So theme 2, her story is a true act of survival. So in the beginning, while on the move, survival was simply making it through each day. Finding the basics, shelter, food, water. Avoiding, evading those who were trying to kill them. She often hated even her own body because of the constant needs that she felt, the hunger, the thirst. For most of their movement through the different countries and between the camps, Clementine was between the ages of 6 and 8. And everywhere they went, the question was, how do I survive here? How do I make it till tomorrow? Luckily, her sister Claire had always been resourceful with a good business sense. She knew that her confidence was currency, and she used that to their advantage time and time again. In fact, Clementine even says, "It was Claire who saved us, Claire who kept us alive." Claire was a deal maker, a hustler. She would trade a sweater for sugar. She would sell clothing on consignment for other vendors in the market for a profit because they recognized her skill. She worked cleaning hotels and homes. She was a parking lot attendant. Wherever they went, she scrapped and worked so that they could carry on. She told Clementine to never accept gifts. To survive, you needed to be indebted to no one. That was a challenge when they reached the States. So many people, good people, reached out to help. They offered goods and services, but it was really hard at that point for Clementine at age 12 to learn trust. To trust anyone, even Claire. More than once, Clementine herself knew herself to be a burden on Claire and feared through this whole ordeal at any time Claire might leave her. Imagine being that young, that fearful, and on your own. So a third theme throughout the book that is related to survival is that of fitting in. So Clementine felt that her whole life consisted of mastering and navigating a new and overwhelming space everywhere she went. And all she wanted was so badly just to belong, to be a part of something, anything, but most particularly a family. While in a refugee camp in Burundi, an aid worker took a fancy to Claire, who was only 16 at the time. He was 25. He convinced her to marry him, and they left the camp and moved in with his family in Zaire. There, for the first time since she left Rwanda, Clementine felt special, felt embraced, remembered, and loved. Claire had her first child, Mariette, there, and then the war found them. They had to leave again, and Clementine was 8. Clementine also had to learn to fit in once she made it to the U.S. She spoke little to no English, but was taken in by an American family who wanted to help. They were well-to-do urbanites near Chicago, and Clementine flourished in their care, but it wasn't easy. Her refugee skills kicked in, and she became whoever those around her wanted her to be. Was she happy? Sure. Did she like cereal for breakfast and peanut butter and jelly for lunch? Sure. But the truth was, she had lost track of time. She lost track of self, And until then, because of her experiences in the camp, she truly believed that her human dignity was expendable. She believed that she was nothing. Her life was fragmented, so she began collecting things to help make sense of her life, like she did as a child. When they arrived in Chicago for the first time, the airlines had lost their one and only bag. Every physical thing she owned, every physical memory she had, every item was in that bag, and it was lost. It may have been only a single picture, a few rocks she'd picked up, a few marbles she'd collected to show her brother, but they were all gone. So she again started to collect what amounted to the detritus, and she traveled with her stuff. It was called her katundu, and it was her ballast, her strength. She even tried collecting memories that she could share with her families once they were reunited. But she found out that at that real reunion after the Oprah segment, that once her family moved as immigrants and not refugees, which makes a difference, to the States, that sharing with what she had experienced with her family wasn't possible. She had lost track of who she was and who they were to one another. And all those who had lived together in Kigali had died. And no one wanted to talk about it. So Clemantine had to work to keep her emotions at bay, and she was not always successful. So I also discovered some common literary threads in the story that were in Clemantine's writing, regardless of which refugee camp or city or even country they found themselves in. The first was she liked to describe things, feelings, emotions using color. A few of the quotes, and you'll find more throughout the book. She said, "Some days the world felt green, some days it felt yellow, but never a happy yellow." Or she said, "My rage at losing my backpack was dark red. Everything in Mozambique was dark red." Or, "The coyote stopped the car at a hut and a cluster of trees and gave us dried meat, bread, and water. Then we started walking across a nature preserve. The sky was orange, that orange I hated. I saw snakes. The coyote hadn't told us there would be snakes." So Clemantine made a point of trying to focus on her surroundings during travel. Everywhere she went, she would try to clue in on the landmarks so that she could find her way back. And if you think about it, where was she looking to find her way back to? Where's my place? Sorry. There we go. There she said. Time and time again, in a vain effort to control her own destiny, she watched intently the landmarks around her. She was never told when they were moving on, never consulted, never asked what she thought or what she wanted. She rarely even got to pack her own bag with a few belongings that she had, but a fear of being left behind kept her moving forward. So at age 8, Clemantine became the mother figure to Claire's children, while Claire hustled to keep them alive, all while desiring so badly to be mothered herself. Clemantine was never allowed to just be a child. She was forced to grow up entirely too fast. So not all the books in this literature circle have a Christian component, but I will share what I found in this book. So Clemantine grew up in a devout Catholic home. Her mother went to church daily, and even her sister, at 9 years older, had her own faith. But I imagine that Clemantine, because she was only 6 years old when they were forced to flee, had little real heart knowledge of God or faith of her own. She heard others around her pray, and often in the most dire of times, she would pray herself. Her mother did teach her a song that she could use to cheer herself up whenever she was hurt. She would sing it before she went to sleep in the refugee camps. And I didn't find a tune. I actually looked for a tune, but I didn't find one. "Scooch closer to God and tell him everything that is painful in your heart, everything that makes you sad, everything that makes you lonely. Whisper to God, God has not forsaken you or abandoned you." But she hurt all the time. So when in the States, as she was older, she read the book Night by Elie Wiesel, and she wrote an essay about it. This is what got her on the Oprah show. But she was particularly taken with the fact that Elie Wiesel questioned the existence of God. No one in her life had ever done that. Claire and their mother had maintained their faith throughout, praising and thanking God for even those things that Clemantine had a hand in. And I think that hurt Clemantine. She didn't understand. Her trauma caused low self-esteem and self-awareness. Her sense of self and individuality had been beaten up and beaten out. War is a thief, she said, indiscriminate to a degree that defiles and the essential pieces of self are stolen. So Clementine felt she needed to remake herself on her own terms. So what you'll see towards the end of the book is her efforts through high school, college, and beyond. She was angry, she was confused, she was traumatized. And so she tried to make sense of her world. She said that she was hard at a young age and hard to love. But her hardness and her love, the love that she was able to show others, did come through. Oh, and the title, The Girl Who Smiled Beads, comes from a traditional Rwandan fable that her nanny, Mukamana, told her as a child about a barren woman who had a child with thunder, whose magical smile produced a gorgeous trail of beads wherever she went. So Clementine believed herself to be that child, because Mukamana gave her that freedom. One who walked the earth, always safe, there but not there, with power and agency over her life. One who was never caught, but always one step ahead. One who was finally seen, finally protected, finally loved. So in follow-up, I believe Clementine Wamariya is a public speaker and human rights advocate. She goes by the name Joyful. Thank you. Any questions you may have? I have one other thing that I'll share if you want me to, but are there any questions, any comments from those who have read it? All right, then I'll share the one thing. Go ahead,
Oh,
Shelley.
no, I was just going to say, I was fascinated as I read this book, but I was also so disturbed about what she had to endure. And so I read it with both those feelings throughout, and she went to Yale. I mean, she really is quite successful. And I was just so proud of her as well, because she really did that mainly on her own. But the one scene that I remember that was so disturbing to me, I Googled the Oprah Winfrey show when she was on with and reunited with her family. And you can do that. I just Googled it. I felt sick watching it, because it was, like you say, such a Hollywood Oprah scene. And I thought, how demeaning to her after all that she, as a child, starting at age 6, had been through. Where were her parents? Like, Oprah just brought them together for her show, a 15-minute episode. And I thought, where were her parents all these years? You know, where was the family? Was anyone trying to find these two sisters? Did they just assume they'd been lost like so many others, fleeing the conflict? So anyway, if you have time, you should Google the Oprah interview, because it was disturbing to me to watch. So
I thought about showing it, and then I decided against it, I think for that very reason, because really the book is not about the genocide. Even in the segment,
right,
she says, you know, the Rwandan genocide was only 100 days. They were gone for 6 years, because once they escaped, they had no papers. They were young, they had no protection. And so once you leave your country, it's kind of like ours now, how do you get back in? And so they traveled across many, many, many countries, were in many camps. They were caught, they were beaten, they were hurt, they were harmed, they were starved. The scars that she has from this, from climbing over the barbed wire, she is sickened by, but they are part of her story. So, and it showed on the Oprah segment, like you said, a whole lot more of children in the conflict, you know, the children at the side of the road, and those were cut and those were hurt, and she saw that on her way, and she experienced that, but that's, her story is her story, not the images of the other. So.
and it was amazing that those two sisters, as young as they were able to stay together, that they were not separated through all that turmoil and
And they fought for that.
confusion. That was really amazing. That was a real hopeful thing as I saw it. It was just how they really stuck together.
And she really had a privileged trajectory afterwards, and her sister didn't,
But
you know, which was kind of
In the last 24 hours, I've just spent so much time thinking about this book and the hostages and the similarities. And we all know what the difference is, being captive or being chased. But a lot of the end results are the same. Malnutrition, just total, no help at all. They had each other. And there were other people that these girls came in contact with, just as the hostages, some evidently had some contact with each other. But I feel they've all, it's just, you can't hardly say one is worse than the other. And even though their time was longer than the 2 years, but so similar in what it's done to them, mentally and physically.
Well, and it's interesting, the end of the book, really, she shares her, pretty much the results of her trauma. How did that trauma affect then her subsequent life? And so, yes.
How much she hated the word genocide.
Yes, there's a whole section, so it's funny when she came to the States, knowing no English, she had a lot to learn. But once she became more proficient, there were teachers that would be a class assignment, define the word genocide and what it means to you. And it was very personal for her. And sometimes she would lash out to say, you just don't understand. Because they didn't. They didn't. So it's, I think she said you can't reduce anything to just one word. And genocide is one word.
I thought it was also interesting that she was able to meet Elie Wiesel, and that he was sort of a hero to her, and that was another hopeful part of the book.
And they met several times. After she spoke and after she wrote this book, she was invited to be on many councils in different formats, around the world. And so, and he even said, we will meet again. And so they did in several contexts, which is interesting. The other thing is, which is fascinating, when they went to South Africa. They were not in a camp there, they were in the city. Claire was hustling, and they were cleaning a home, and apparently they always cleaned the living room, and Oprah came on in South Africa. And she said, didn't understand a word that she said, but they loved watching Oprah and the way she interacted with her audience, the way she always was on a different couch in a different outfit. And she just idolized, she thought she was a goddess. And Claire, her older sister, said, she's no better than the rest of us. What makes her so special? And it's fascinating because Claire had a quote. So Claire always taught me, everything is yours, everything is not yours. The world owes you nothing. Nobody deserves more or less than the next person. And she felt that way about Oprah. And then they ended up meeting Oprah. So I thought it was just an interesting time. And then Oprah kept him in the loop. They reconnected. When Oprah opened a school for young girls in South Africa, she invited Clemantine to come with her and be one of her emissaries. And that's what actually reminded her of the story, The Girl Who Smiled Beads. Because she saw beaded dolls, and she asked her sister, she said, did I have a beaded doll? And her sister says, no. She kept hounding her sister. Her sister finally said, that's the story you wanted me to keep telling you. She started the story that you're going to write. So, any other questions? Yes?
I loved how the foster mothers, how she would find foster mothers, but how the main one in the U.S., when she put the necklace on her, she had never felt like but I came here that I belonged until then or something like that.
And the necklace was one that belonged to her mother, maybe.
Yeah.
The other part about it is, though, I think the same, so it was kind of like the Blind Side, if you've seen that movie about the family who takes in. So she was cared for by a well-to-do family outside Chicago and sent to school and helped along the way. But when they put the foster mother, we'll call her mother in a nursing home, she had this big tin of beads and buttons and all these things. And so Clementine took it, and apparently from then on, 9th grade or so on, she made bracelets, big chunky beaded bracelets. And if you look, I think I saw them both. So when you look at the Oprah segment, I think she's wearing one in her recorded section, segment. And you'll see a big chunky bracelet. And then you see another one of her on the stage, a different one. And she made those, it calmed her down. And she made those too, though, to give to people who she saw as being troubled. If she saw someone who maybe had been through trauma, she would offer them a bracelet. And it's funny because I think she felt like sort of the theme of beads also runs through the book. And she felt like her life was like a strand of unstrung beads. It was just so disconnected. And she was just looking for that thread to pull it all together and to make sense of her life. So that's sort of the theme throughout. But I think you do see her own creations that she's wearing in those video segments. So it's kind of fun. Anything else? Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Morgan. Good job, as always. Okay, next month, November the 11th. Don't forget Ellen and her books will be over here. And we have Susie and Scott Simpson, who are going to review Sipsworth. And just for those of you that may not be aware, our library does keep copies of all the books we're reading. So if you're interested, we certainly hope to see some of you back again. And feel free to get a book from the library and join us then.